Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone from your respective time zones. Welcome back to the TEG, the Entrepreneurship Gyan Talks. And of course, this is the first talk of this year, 2026. And the biggest reason is that ITBA team was very occupied in different events, as you would be knowing, reunions and all those things. So we thought, okay, instead of January, maybe we'll start with February. And as we have been seeing in the previous talks, most of our speakers, of course, gender is a problem, but I'm not talking specifically on gender. That gender is a challenge. I'm saying that most of our speakers have been male speakers, and Deepthi and I specifically were looking if somehow we can find female entrepreneurs, female leaders who would love to spend some time and devote some time in one of these talks. Particularly, otherwise it was looking a biased set of speakers, and that was never the point of TEG to have a biased set of speakers from either of the fields. It focus on entrepreneurship as a practice, but also academic side and policy side. That is one thing that we try to maintain, that we can bring in speakers from academia, from the entrepreneurship world, but also from the policy world, as we have been doing. You have seen variety of speakers, but then we were seeing this gender thing was happening, and of course one may argue that IIT Bombay had a lot of male alumni, and it makes sense to have a lot of alumni, male leaders as well. But that's not necessarily true, that we can't find female leaders or alumni who have been leading in entrepreneurial space per se, and that's what we are striving for, to have more diverse set of speakers. With that, I think you all already know what TEG is, but it's my duty to repeat, at least to the few new participants that join us all the time, or who may watch this in the near future. So TEG started with this idea. The broad idea was to create a platform where people can seek some kind of opportunities or look forward to help, and look forward to some kind of mentorship. That was the broad idea. So in terms of platform, when I say initially we were very active on Telegram, then we had now we have a WhatsApp group. I think in total, if you see, TG community is now 4,000 plus. If you see 70,000 alumni, 4,000 plus it has already reached, which is quite interesting. Another thing is that it's open to non-alumni as well. So that is another angle that we bring in. One thing that I have been saying for at least last 2 years, I remember now since we started, is that we will have one event. So I would use this as an opportunity to give a heads up also, that we are planning for an in-person TG event, rather entrepreneurship event. Of course, it would be an IIT BAA event, but jointly with other prime bodies within IIT and outside IIT. And we are planning around mid-November. Tentatively, you can put in your calendars maybe 14th and 15th November for now. And then, of course, you will get official communications in the near future. So for now, I am being supported by two of our mentors who are going to be co-chairs with me. Of course, one you are seeing here is Rishi, other is Rajan Vaz. And the good thing is that he just put a comment. So he's very active also. So he is one of the co-chairs that is going to be in the event. You will see fantastic set of speakers. Again, I will request Rekha also to be there, but also Rizwan and that people I'll invite. So all those formalities will go ahead. But that idea was that we create a platform, we start with something, we start something continuous, because a lot of initiatives start, but then they end. So we start continuous, we keep on doing things and build upon that. And then eventually we look what more we can do in terms of in-person kind of event. So that is the direction that we have been taking. And then, of course, try to be active in the group, because people are very active. They're looking synergies. There are even different special interest group within TEG also. So not necessarily it's a broad group, but also there are, for example, if you are focused on AI, you will find a subgroup on AI. If you're focused on energy, you'll find subgroup on that. You are focusing on non-profits, there is a subgroup on that. So it's quite active in that sense, and people are quite open to help there. And with that, I will not take more time, and I will ask my co-host Rishi to formally introduce our esteemed speaker.
Well, thank you, Weber. It's a pleasure to introduce Ms. Rekha Koita, who is an Indian management consultant turned philanthropist and social impact leader, who co-founded Koita Foundation, a strategic philanthropy organization that helped nonprofits scale and improve outcomes through the smart use of technology, data, and digital transformation. I'm sure you have heard of those IIT Bombay buildings, KCDH or Koita Center of Digital Health. Yes, that's the one. That's the Koita we are talking about. So Rekha completed her Bachelor's of Technology in Metallurgical Engineering from IIT Bombay in 92, graduating with the Institute's Silver Medal for academic excellence. She went on to earn her Master's of Science in Material Science and Engineering from Carnegie Mellon University in 1994, one of the top programs in engineering and technology. She began her professional career at Accenture, where for over 8 years, she was a management consultant focused on operations, business process reengineering, ERP design and implementation, performance enhancement, and human resources across a range of industries. Drawing on her consulting experience, Rekha also spent many years conducting corporate training for leadership, structured problem solving, and business communication skills for both large enterprises and development organizations. Now, this is the experience that helped her later on. In the mid 2010s, Rekha transitioned fully into the social sector, driven by a conviction that nonprofits could multiply their impact if they embraced technology, data analytics, and scalable operational systems. She co founded the Koita Foundation in 2016 with her husband, Rizwan Koita, channeling her expertise into strengthening nonprofit performance and expanding access to quality education, livelihoods, digital health, and community programs across India. Her work emphasizes not just funding, but active engagement in building capacity, governance, and digital solutions that improve delivery and measurable results. Under Rekha's leadership, the Koita Foundation has partnered with academic institutions, national healthcare organizations, government bodies, and NGOs to design standards, tools, and platforms that help organizations improve efficiency and scale their services. With her generous contribution, Koita Center for Digital Health, yes, that's the one I mentioned earlier, was established at the IIT Bombay and Ashoka University. Rekha's contributions have been recognized with prestigious honors, including the Distinguished Service Award from IITB in 2019, and alongside her co founder, the Forbes India Leadership Award for grassroots philanthropists, acknowledging their deep involvement in catalyzing social impact through innovation and technology. Here we have Ms. Rekha Koita.
So Rekha, before we directly go into questions, maybe you can share a couple of words. Yeah.
Sorry, Vebha, I could not hear you.
Okay. No, I said before we jump into the questions, the fireside chat, maybe if you would like to share some words of wisdom, that would be interesting.
Okay, thank you very much, Rishi, for such a generous and detailed introduction. And it's lovely to be here and with so many fellow IITians. I think IIT sets a lot of foundation for all of us to do various different things, and I think it also equips us with the skills to be flexible and do multiple different things, explore various avenues, and I think that's what I have kind of done in my life. I've recast myself several times from being a metallurgical engineer and then to doing research in semiconductors, which is what I did at Carnegie Mellon, to joining Accenture, doing management consulting, then doing you know consulting skills training, corporate training for several years, and then kind of deep diving into the social sector. So it's been a very interesting journey, and I'm really happy to be here and share more with all of you.
Thanks a lot. So I'll take this opportunity to especially thank CEO of IIT Bombay Alumni Association. She is with us, Deepthi, and I reached out with this particular problem to her that, we need to do something on this. She was, she was very quick on this, and we worked, and, we were able to bring Rekha here. And without taking any further time, I would directly ask, very, question which came first to my mind, that, you had a successful corporate and consulting career, and maybe you had a personal moment, you had some kind of realization, or something else that was happening, that you transitioned into social sector and eventually founded Quetta Foundation. And my guess is this might be a question of several other participants here. So maybe, if you can share something on that.
Yeah, sure. Just to, a quick kind of a background is also that while I was doing consulting with Accenture, at that time, in those very early days, right, which was probably in the mid 90s or late 90s, that this thought did come to my mind that, we are working so hard as consultants with corporates and trying to bring about change, right, in terms of systems, processes, technology, and getting them to improve their own, operations, etc. And social sector organizations who are far more kind of resource strapped and who are solving really complex problems actually don't have any of this help, right? Because most of them cannot afford these kind of consulting assignments, especially in those days. And I felt even then that the social sector would benefit from this consulting type of engagement, right? But honestly, at that stage of my life, I was, too busy with my corporate career and with other things. And so I did not act on that thought. It was just there at the back of my mind. But then if I fast forward, to 2016, I think at that point, while everything was going well, um, and I was enjoying my, whatever I was doing, but there was some kind of a restlessness which had set in, and I felt that I just wanted to do something more, something different. And I actually didn't know. I was really struggling in terms of saying, what should I do? And then Rizwan, actually, he just said something to me, which I think had an impact really, which is where he said that, see, at this point of our life, you do not need to either really kind of, chase either money or, position or try to climb up some kind of a ladder or anything. At this point of life, where we have some financial security, where you need to look for what you think is going to be more meaningful, what will give you satisfaction and happiness, in the, years going forward, because this is almost like a different stage of life. And I think that really got me thinking, that it made me somehow it just opened up a lot of things in my mind. I felt that, I could really just, why was I restricting my thinking? Why not think of really what would give more sense of gratification? And I think that's when I kind of went back to the old thought, that I had during my consulting days. And I felt that I wanted to use my time and my skills, whatever skills I had, to really help in the social sector. And, that then led to my onward journey. And finally, we started the foundation. But I did not start off saying that, yes, I want to start a foundation. I just started by the thought of saying that I want to use my time and skills to help the sector to solve problems or to contribute in some meaningful manner. In fact, even the money, I would say, the funding piece of it, I mean, it came alongside, but the thought of funding it came almost after deciding that I would put my time and efforts.
So speaking of time, you have often talked about valuing time, knowledge, and systems over funding. So where does this philosophy come from? I'm sure your work experience at Accenture or other ways. So give us some insight.
See, because I believe that any change that you're trying to bring about is difficult, right? I mean, if you look at the social sector, and I mean, I think a lot of these things that I'm saying are very much applicable to any business or any corporate. But if you're really looking to bring about social change and you're looking to improve the outcomes and the scale of the social sector, or bring about what we call systemic change, right? If I look at our work in healthcare, any such work requires a lot of effort. It requires a lot of skills, and there are certain skill sets which you need. It's not easy. They're very tough problems to solve. and you have to solve tough, complex problems in a resource-constrained environment. It's really not easy. And most of the people in the social sector, they would not be having the capacity in-house to be able to take this on and be successful in it. And nor do they have the ability, often due to lack of resources, to get that external help which can help them, right? Like a corporate might hire a consultant or some other expert, right, who can help them to solve certain problems and put that focus, that energy, that expertise, and push them through. Social sector doesn't have that ability normally. And therefore, I felt, and I still feel, that I think the time and the effort we put in is very instrumental to the change and the impact that we are able to deliver. I don't think it would have worked any other way. I also believe, one reason why I genuinely believe that time is important, especially for trying to solve big problems. Second thing is that, if you look at it from a different perspective, right? As a philanthropist, if you are, looking to, spend money or give money in the sector, right? That to get, in a sense, more mileage out of your money, or to make sure that the money gets the right impact or is utilized well, it won't happen unless it is done in a very thoughtful, kind of determined way. And for that, again, I think involvement of time is important to help the NGOs build that capacity and to kind of really like hold their hand and walk with them in that journey together.
Thanks. I think you mentioned Rizwan's name, and a lot of them might be knowing, a lot of them might not be knowing. So Rizwan Quetta is her co-founder, but also her husband. So and of course he has his own set of work as well. So in case you were wondering, what that name is, you can look up on their profiles later. Nonetheless, going forward, of course, you saw some some gaps there, but then specifically given you are coming from technology background and how you are enabling it, and so this is interesting that where did you feel technology could make the biggest difference, and maybe some gaps that you found which technology could bridge, but maybe other gaps which it couldn't. So maybe you can shed some light on that, coming from technology background. What gaps did you see, and how you thought that it would have a role to play?
Absolutely. So as I said, right, I started off saying that I want to use my time and my, and do something in the sector. But I honestly had no idea what I could really do. At that time, I had not gone in thinking that I'm going to do technology in the social sector. With the help of Dasra, I got introduced to an organization called Antarang Foundation, which works on helping youth to find careers of their choice and get into employment, which is careers of choice. And as I was kind of just understanding what they do better, trying to understand where are they stuck and where are they having problems, I realized that they had a lot of problems which could be solved through technology, right? So basically, and then that same pattern repeated for a number of NGOs. So after exploring and working with 2 or 3 NGOs, what my realization was that there are a lot of organizations who are doing great work on the ground. They're very, very good programs, very effective on the ground, but then they are getting capped out. Like they're unable to scale, and they're unable to kind of improve on their own outcomes, on their efficiencies, because of absence of systems and processes. So simply put, if an NGO has to deliver high quality service consistently at scale, you need to have standardized processes and you need to have technology, right? Because if you cannot manage your operations because you don't have tech, and you don't know what's happening on the ground, you cannot analyze the data, you don't know if your programs are working, you don't know how your people are doing, it's not possible to scale, nor is it possible to get great outcomes, right? That's, I think, one thing which was very glaring and in the face almost, right? So that was the first thing. The second thing was, I realized that some of the organizations realized that they did not have the tech tools to kind of go ahead, right? But then at the same time, they didn't know, they didn't know how to do it either. They said, we know we need to do it, but we don't know how to do it. And we don't know whom to go to, and we don't know what tech to use. So what should we do? There were others who didn't even know where they should be using tech. right? You can use tech for different things, but where are you going to get the most kind of bang for the buck in a sense, right? Where will your technology have a multiplier effect? You need to use it for programmatic techs. A lot of people are trying to use tech for like finance or HR, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not going to give you the multiplier effect that it will when you do your programs, right? So for example, if if you can improve the efficiency of your field force, so a field force who's handling say 200 families can now handle 300 or 350 families, then for the same money you're increasing your scale by 30%, right? So that's a huge benefit to the organization. So they didn't have they didn't have the systems and tools. So that was one part. The second part was they didn't even have the capacity to really do this, even if they wanted to. Many of them were not even aware of the possibilities that tech could provide them. And the third thing was, which is equally important for them, is that nobody was willing to fund it. Okay, because people were looking in those days, I'm talking about 2016, 17, right? Where people generally, donors were looking at tech as a overhead cost. Whereas it should be actually part of your programmatic costs if it is a programmatic tech. So these were the kind of gaps that we saw, and I felt that that was aligning well with my skills, because since I had been doing this kind of work in Accenture, I understood what needs to be done. And we had access to tech vendors and other things. So getting the systems and putting things in place and helping them to skill their teams to be able to take on these journeys was something which came easily to me. And we were willing to fund it also because we believed in it very strongly, and we could see what kind of catalytic impact tech would have, because we've seen it, right, in so many other sectors. If you look at banking, you look at finance, you look at all kinds of other sectors, we've seen it. So why not here?
Thanks.
So
Thanks.
digging a little bit deeper on that side, I'm leading IIT Bay Area's WhatsApp groups, and we got capped out, at 2,000 community members, and we had to kind of think about that. So many social initiatives like that, they remain small and fragmented because of some technology scale. But initially you start because it's free, it's convenient, etc., etc. So how can an organization think about scale right from the beginning while designing, its initial foundational approach?
No, I think organizationally, you have to think of scale right from the beginning, especially in the social sector, just because, honestly, in India, with the kind of size of our country and our population and the magnitude of the problems that we have to solve, right? You have to think of scale from the beginning. And at an organization level also, you have to have a goal as to where are you planning to take this program, and therefore what kind of technology, the architecture, and even the organizational structure has to be planned and thought through right from the beginning. And that is what we do with all our organizations. So like one of the organizations, for example, was doing a parent engagement program for 2,000 parents, but they said we want to scale to 20,000 and 50,000. So I said, if you want to do that, then we need to figure out even what your organization is going to look like, and then accordingly, what kind of tech do you need? And so we try to plan it out right from the beginning by taking the organization vision into account.
Thanks. Well, so this is quite interesting, and also in academia we keep hearing a lot of times, especially people who are from not non-IITB or non-IIT, that IIT network is the key. You get into IIT network is the main thing. So here you are clearly mentioning that the degree helped you a lot, because your understanding from IIT did help you when you were actually thinking about doing it, and you did it differently because of course you had whatever inclination you had. But then this is, even in academia, because I'm also a professor, so I keep hearing a lot that this degree is getting irrelevant, or this particular field of studies getting irrelevant because AI is there or whatever is there. But understanding of tech is not that easy to go, because if you are taking it in some other direction, it does reap benefits, or it does solve problems in some other way. Which brings to me this question. So talking about technology in social impact, largely people will think about some kind of digitization, and this is easier to think as well, because of course things were non-digital, you were able to do that. But from your experience, share what is the true meaning, or what is the broader meaning of tech-enabled transformation and what it actually looks like?
I think that's a great question. So I think one of the things which I always tell all the organizations I work with is we are not trying to do digitization. If you just want to do digitization, then you don't need me. What we're looking to do is actually digital transformation, which means that at the end of that whole process, right, the way you're using technology, it is a strategic thought process which goes into tech, which is why we always get the leadership involved very heavily into this whole process, because it has to be strategic, your use of tech. And it has to transform your organization, which means it has to transform your people, it has to transform your processes, it has to transform the way you are giving, way you are delivering services. Your entire value prop can also change, not always, but in certain cases, you can even change the value proposition that you are giving. So first of all, at a very simple level, most of the organizations, almost all the organizations we work with, one of the things that they have achieved over the years is scale. And I can give you many examples, like this Antarang Foundation that I was talking about. They used to do this career counseling program, which they were managing manually through Excel sheets with 3,000 children, because they couldn't do more than 3,000 children because they were having everything manually and they were looking up everything and doing it. It was impossible to scale. But through systems, in 1 year, they went from 3,000 to 30,000. And today, I think they're at some 200,000. Another organization which was running these community balwadis, they were doing Vipla Foundation, 54 balwadis they had. Now BMC has seen what they're doing. BMC has adopted the system. It's gone to some 1,300 balwadis. So people who are in 5 districts are in 10 districts. So everybody has been able to scale using technology. So that's one thing which we have seen uniformly. The other thing is outcomes have improved. Right? Because what happens is in any NGO, there are certain inputs you give, you get certain outcomes. Now, if you can analyze, monitor, and manage those outcomes, and you see what's actually happening on the field, what's working, what's not working, then you adjust your resources, the people and the kind of programming that you do, and therefore you get better outcomes, right? So, for example, if you're working in health, then the health outcomes improve. Right, we do a lot of work in child health and malnutrition, and we found that the malnutrition of children, they're getting out of malnutrition faster, or they're not as many are getting into malnutrition. The performance of children in schools, etc., everywhere we see a big change in outcomes. And of course, there is efficiency, right? So as I explained to you, the reach of the field staff, for example, field staff in many places, field staff are visiting parents, or they're visiting beneficiaries for health or for education or for whatever. Just simple planning and scheduling systems which help them to help a lot in terms of saving people's time, and they're able to reach more people. So there is, efficiency, effectiveness or program outcomes, scale. And the last thing is that your ability to kind of really change the value proposition, right? For example, one of the organizations we work with, like Sneha, whom we have worked with, right? They provide nutrition counseling to mothers, right? Pregnant mothers and small children. Now, typically, the intervention has always been where a field worker goes and talks to the mother and gives information. The other way is it's done through the government systems. So all that is done, right? But ultimately, now what they're doing is through the use of even simple like chatbots, right, in local languages and all, which are designed for the users. The mothers themselves are getting empowered, right? So you're changing your value proposition. It's not just about the field worker going and kind of pushing things onto the mother, but it's about giving the mother that agency that she can actually ask questions. She can understand what she needs to do for herself or for her child. So you're changing the game. And that's possible only because of tech. And I think today's day and age, with a lot of the simpler tools and AI and other things, the ability to empower the end user or the beneficiary has really increased. The ability to reach the most marginalized people have also improved, right? Because you can really reach people anywhere. And smartphone penetration and other things have also helped us, right? Better networks, smartphone. So the possibilities are honestly immense. And I think it's a very exciting time to be in the sector and work with technology. Even in healthcare, right? We see so many examples. We've recently actually ran an awards, Tech Awards, KF Tech Awards for AI, use of AI in the social sector, and we found some amazing applications, right from the legal systems to social justice and civic rights to environment to health to education. It's was quite mind-blowing, honestly.
Great. Thanks. Yeah. Rishi.
Oh, that's amazing. So with scale comes a lot of data, especially you're talking of hundreds of thousands of numbers, data being collected. And as you mentioned just now, with Sneha Foundation, the value being delivered based on that data. So somehow that data has to be used and massaged to create an impact, right? So yes, data is the new gold, but without analysis, data is just sitting there on storage doing nothing. So how do you um, help institutions, nonprofits to move from just making decisions to taking that data and then making decisions?
That's an amazing question. And actually, that is one of our goals. We say that the technology is not, it's not about tech. Actually, it's about processes. The bigger thing is that it's about people, right? Because people have to change and they have to become more data driven in their decision making. So the way we do it is that right from the beginning, we get the leadership on board and we tell them, we ask them firstly, what are your goals out of this? As we're looking to solve this problem, what is it that you're trying to achieve and how should the system help you? And therefore, what is it that you need to measure, right? There is that very, I mean, don't mean to sound cliche, but we've all heard that phrase, right? That what gets measured gets done. So metrics, KPIs, data is very important, and we try to build that in right from the beginning. So before we design the detailed system itself, we ask them, what is it that you're going to measure? What is it important? What is important for you? And we try to build that in a way that it's kind of hierarchical around the whole organization structure, right? So people can start looking at their own reportees and how each reportee is doing, right down to the level of the field worker. So ultimately, the goal is that you have to train the field, and then this one is designing all these metrics and getting the data and getting the reports. But the bigger piece in this is capacity building, because you have to train people. People are not, in a sense, you have to build what I would call data literacy in the field staff, in the managerial staff, right? They have to get used to looking at data and taking action, right? So ideally in a review meeting, rather than the boss pulling up the field workers, right, the management pulling up field workers, the field worker actually should come prepared, saying that this is my data and this is how I'm doing and this is where I need your help and this is where how I'm planning to solve it. But to get to that stage is a journey. So one, that you have to, we use what I would call a top-down and a bottom-up approach. So the top-down approach is to make sure that the leadership is aligned and they are very clear in terms of what they want, what is important, and what needs to be viewed. They are also committed to looking at the reports from the system, doing their reviews along with the data from the system, so that people also start adhering to that. The other piece of it becomes the bottoms up piece, right? Where you're working with the field staff and other people to get them to understand these reports, understand the importance, and um, to start acting on it and to start understanding it. So that's kind of the approach that we take. So it's not, it's, as I said, it's not always easy. It is a journey, but that is in some ways also, I think, the more challenging piece. Getting the software developed and deployed is not as difficult, but getting people to firstly fill the data in time accurately is one challenge. Second big challenge is to get them to use the data. So it is a challenge, but one has to work on it very consistently, and you have to literally go hammer and tong and be after it to have it done. And it has
Thanks.
to be driven by the organization. We cannot drive it beyond a point. They have to drive it.
Mm. Yeah, and I think on that, of course, there are two questions that I already see in chat. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to post. But these questions also relate to the next question that I already had in my mind that we prepared, but also in terms of what two people have put. So one thing is how to motivate, engineers towards entrepreneurship, or in this case, okay, engineers is one thing, but in general, people who want to solve some problems towards solving certain problems, especially in social entrepreneurship. But also, largely about some real world challenges that you would have seen nonprofits have been facing, especially in adopting technology or capacity, or for example, this question is about mindset or in terms of cost, and Koita Foundation has been helping them. So maybe if you can give two or three concrete examples, or some use cases, and that is what I think the questions are in the chat as well, and that would be helpful for people to understand that what kind of concrete problems your foundation is working with.
You want like use cases, or you want the
Yeah, use
problem
cases. Yeah,
or
use
the
cases.
problem?
Maybe
Okay.
you solved Koita solved a problem, for example, yeah, with data or tech or otherwise. Yeah. Mhm.
So, okay, one example I can give is in this organization which was working again in maternal and child health. So they worked in that what they call the first 1,000 days, which is pregnancy up to the child being 2 years. And the aim was, healthy pregnancy, delivery, and good, like reducing malnutrition in children. And their program was such where their field workers were going to the mothers, registering the mothers and the children, and counseling them. They had a certain protocol, right? That they had so many visits for the pregnant woman, and then after the child is born, they do one visit a month, etc. And every time you're supposed to ask people certain questions. Every field worker was handling 200 families. So the CEO came to us saying that I have two problems. One problem is that my every field worker is supposed to visit 200, cover these 200 families, but on a day-to-day basis, how do we make sure that the field worker is visiting the right person, right? How does she decide whom to visit today? I'm starting my day today. Out of the 200, whom do I visit today? It's a complex process, right? Because it depends on when you visited them last. Then again, what is the health condition? If the child is very malnourished, then you have to meet them more often. A healthy child, you can meet less often, etc., etc. There are a whole host of. So how do we know that they're meeting the right person? A simple thing. So whom to meet? Second is, what are they saying? How do you make sure that every field worker is delivering the message that they need to be delivering when they are doing that meeting? And when you go on the field, you realize that, because when I accompanied them, so one thing we do as part of our work is, before we decide on what technology and what problem to solve, a lot of our work goes into problem definition. How do we define the problem? And when you go to the field, you see a lot of things. So when we went to the field, we realized that they were spending hours just trying to figure out whom to meet today. Right? Because they didn't have the data. They didn't know when, like if I've met, suppose Vaibhav, I visited your home, I don't remember when I visited and what was the condition, and then when do I need to meet? And then there are 200 people I'm handling, right? So you can just imagine the complexity of that whole thing. So that is one thing we saw. And then when people are going to visit, not every field worker is that good in terms of conveying the right message, right? If you're meeting a mother with a 3-month-old baby or a 6-month-old baby, you have to tell the mother different things. And there are people at times where I've gone and they've not even said anything. They just ask them, "Ah, bacha theek hai, sab acha hai," and they just move on, right? So that also was happening. Everybody is not going to be equally skilled. So again, that what I told you, right? High quality, consistent service delivery at scale. How do you ensure that? So this was the problem. Whom to visit and what to say in every visit. So what we did is we put together a tool which would aid them in scheduling and planning. So based on the past visit history and the data, it would give them a list of the visits that were due in the next 3 days, not make a schedule for them, because if you make the schedule and give it to them, then it removes their ownership from the whole process. So we give them a list of suggested, saying that these are the next few days, these are the visits due. And out of those visits, these are the people who are high risk, right? High risk pregnancy or children with severe malnutrition. So this is whom you are supposed to be visiting, and we would do it by geography, right? Based on the areas, Anganwadis in this case. So then they could plan their, routing also accordingly. So that saved a lot of their time. And as I said, they were able to reach many more. Like instead of 200, they were able to cover 300, 350 families. Also, the number of missed visits that they were having reduced. Otherwise, they used to have a lot of missed visits. So the number of missed visits, than 10% missed visits. So the number of missed visits went down. The other thing is what to say. So we kind of made an app which was a decision support app. So once you put the name of the mother, you know the stage of the pregnancy, and you're able to ask the relevant questions for that stage of her pregnancy or of the child's growth. So again, and everybody's asking the same question, and then you're recording the answers there and there. So you've got all the data. So that's one example.
No, fantastic. And just a quick question to follow up. So, for example, in this particular case, did you figure out that this organization needs your help, or they reached out to you? There's a mechanism that these smaller organizations can reach out to you, and and then there's a process from there. How does it typically work?
In the early days, honestly, when I was just starting, at that time, I used the help of Dasra actually to connect with a couple of organizations. So that's how I got started. But then as we worked for a few years and, kind of people could see what we were doing, then we reached now, I think it's people generally tend to approach us or somebody refers us.
Okay.
So it just happened, right?
Okay. And I think because a lot of these initiatives or a lot of these events that you keep doing, so maybe some of them tend to know what Quetta Foundation is doing because of these events now, maybe, something like that. Yeah. All right. Thanks. Hiroshi, maybe you can take the next question.
So you worked with nonprofits, governments, academic institutions, and tech partners, and you work with them together. These are all very different animals and different ways of getting them to work. So when you work with them together, what makes this cross-sector collaboration succeed or fail? What are the big insights there?
See, if you look at government collaborations, I mean, that is its own kind of, ball game in the sense, right? So with government, what happens is that one needs to make sure that you co-create with government. You have to, if any government collaboration works better if you're co-creating with them. So if you make a solution and give it to them, they not necessarily, they may not be able to accept it as easily as when you involve them in part of co-creation. And I think even with NGOs, it's a lot of even with NGOs and tech partners, right? We get the NGOs and the tech partners on the same page and we kind of co-create solutions together. We all visit the field together. We thrash out what could be the problem, what could be the solution, and we kind of work very closely with everybody hand in hand. The other thing that I think works well is to have relationships at multiple levels, right? So even if it's an NGO, it's not just the CEO or the leadership, but it is also all the people down the line, right? So people from my team and people from the NGO team, we have to have like many to many relationships. And with government also, that's even more important, right? Because as we know, a lot of the bureaucrats and all, they keep changing from time to time. So I may have a great rapport with somebody and I'm doing some work and then that person changes and then I don't want my whole initiative to go. So I think that close, I think relationship building at multiple levels, co-creation, getting people involved and trying to therefore create some kind of a cultural change, right? Those things are really what all are required to make these collaborations successful.
Great. Thanks. I see a very deep question, I would say, from Sridhar Reddy Kona. I think you must be knowing him well. Of course, he is the president of ITBHF, but otherwise also an ITB alumni. And his question is very interesting. So he's asking, how much of these benefits is about urban populace in India, rural versus urban? That's what he's asking about. And is it fair to say that it is tilted towards urban at the moment? And what he realizes is that there are tons of NGOs serving farmers and rural problems, but somehow what he understands is that they are impacted more in the urban areas as compared to rural areas. And of course, this is his understanding of data, whatever data he might be thinking of. So maybe you can shed some light on this in terms of where the impact is actually of
You're talking about the technology or you're talking about in general?
He's talking about in general. I think he's more talking about the social sector work in general. All
No,
the
the
social sector work.
sector work, in fact, a lot of it is in rural areas.
Okay.
A lot of it is in rural areas. It's not that it's just, in fact, a lot of the larger NGOs are working quite a bit in rural areas. If you look at some of the large foundations, like even like Gates Foundation, Piramal Foundation, all these, they're doing a lot of deep work in, UP and Bihar and large states like that, Rajasthan. So there is a lot of work which is happening even in rural, even in education, right? You have organizations like Educate Girls and all, which are going to the most marginalized areas and trying to get girls into schools. And so there is a lot of work happening in rural also.
Mm.
The organizations are slightly different. Mostly organizations may not work in urban and rural at the same time because it's a little different, right? What you need to be successful in rural is a little different from what you need to do in urban. So it's a slightly different model that you would use.
Mm.
So it's not necessarily that the same organization will work in both places, but a lot of work happening in rural.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So
And then also, yeah.
Yeah, so it's amazing to see that it's doing a lot more work in the rural areas, but most of the rural population is also not so tech enabled or educated. So how do you ensure that the technology-led solutions don't unintentionally exclude the very communities that they're meant to serve?
So there are two, three things in this. You see, a lot of the tech solutions are also not necessarily being used by the end beneficiary, right? So there's some solutions which are being used by the end beneficiary, like maybe a chatbot, for example, right? So people are trying to get solutions which are easy to use by the end beneficiary, but there are a lot of solutions which are basically being used by the service provider, right? So the field worker or the health worker or whatever, right? Like there are a lot of healthcare solutions where people are, say, taking x-rays and doing some kind of image processing to find out if people are having certain disease conditions, like whether it's TB or even orthopedic or whatever it is, right? So that is not really being used by the end user, but it is helping them, right? Because you can actually reach people in rural areas through these tools. So so that is, I mean, kind of not really excluding them. In fact, it's making it more inclusive because you're being able to provide them with benefits which you could not do earlier.
Right.
That is
So
the
the
thing.
technology is used by the organization in many ways and not
The technology
necessarily
is
the
used
end
by
user.
the organization to help them to reach these people who are quite marginalized, right? And who won't get access to those services. And even when you're having technology for the end beneficiary, it is normally the way not to exclude them is to really design it around them, right? So you actually have to go to the field, even in urban population, by the way, anything that you build for anybody, whether it is a field worker or whether it is an end person in either an urban slum or a rural community, whoever is the end user, right? You have to go and meet them and understand them and see what they need and what their problems and what they are willing to use, what is their behavior like. Right. So a lot of why is WhatsApp becoming popular? Because people are already on WhatsApp. So that becomes an easy transition for them to use something which is already on WhatsApp. If you ask them to download a separate app, they won't download it, right? So you have to do things like that you have to meet people where they are, basically. And for that, you have to go and you have to talk to them and you have to understand them. And that is how you can make something which is usable by them and which will be used by them and where they will not feel excluded.
Great. And Jijo, can you please unmute Sridhar because he had he wanted to maybe go deeply into whatever question he was asking. So if you can quickly unmute him, that could be interesting, and he can ask his question quickly. Is he still there, Jijo? Okay, I think he's able to do it. Yes.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Appreciate you unmuting me. Hi, Rekha. I don't think we've had a chance to meet, although, I don't need an introduction for you. Know a bunch of your classmates and, your reputation precedes you. So looking forward to meeting with you one of these days.
Thank you so
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. So, Rekha, I don't think, I just want to qualify, like Vaibhav said, my data is not empirical, it's anecdotal, okay? The only thing I can say in defense of my claim is that my parents live in a rural area and we are from a farming community, although my father worked as a teacher, went back into farming, and I've seen him, and it's an area, it's like a Vidarbha-like area in Andhra Pradesh. And my question is more, I just want to ask your opinion. I somehow get the feeling I look at a bunch of NGOs focusing on farmers and better seeds and better this and better that. but somehow I don't see the impact. My question is more about the impact. I think there is the NGOs that focus on urban women or like, underprivileged women in the urban areas or the slums. I somehow feel like the impact is much more in the social issues that those NGOs are trying to solve versus this farmers focused or the rural focused NGOs. And first, would you agree with that claim? If you
So,
don't agree with that claim,
see, let me put it this way. See, there are a lot of people who are doing work in rural, okay? Lots of work is happening in rural. It's not that the
I
work,
agree.
okay, lots of work is happening, but also rural is much more challenging. So to have an impact in rural, it takes more time and it is more difficult. So you do see impact in certain areas, but it's not, you may not be seeing it everywhere right now. But there is impact
Yeah.
in certain areas, maybe not in everything. I don't know specifically about the geography that you are saying and in farming, but there are organizations who have had good impact even in farming and agriculture. Like in Maharashtra and all, I know there are like some like Pani Foundation and all who have done some good work. There are other people who are doing some good work. So there is impact which is happening. There are people who are doing work in rural, and I've seen like even Swadesh Foundation, all the kind of rural turnover and all that they've got turnaround rather, which has been really good. I've seen their villages and gone and seen it is good. There is work happening.
Mm.
But see, there is a large
Scale.
chunk of rural. Yeah, the scale is of rural and the magnitude of problems are also larger, right? So to penetrate that and to see that kind of impact will also take more time. But a lot of good work is happening actually.
Great.
Okay, and there are ways to measure this, like benchmark it and say,
The measurement will
how,
happen from the organization who's doing it, right? And
right. Okay.
studies which might be have been published. So there are some organizations who publish reports, right, on this. Like for example, Nudge Foundation is doing a lot of work on this ultra poor,
Okay.
and organizations like JPAL do a lot of stuff around evidence building. So you'll have to look at reports and sector reports which are published or organization reports if you're looking at a specific organization.
Right,
Great.
right. Okay. No, good to
Thanks.
know. I figured you would have some opinion, not necessarily give me a full answer, but I wanted to see how you viewed those NGOs. So thank you for that.
Thanks. Let's move ahead. Well, Sridhar was mentioning about Yavatmal-like region in Andhra he comes from. We have Hirshi who is coming from core heart. He was mentioning about Vidarbha-like region. He comes from Yavatmal. And funny thing is, Yavatmal was my field visit. I lived there for a week, so I understand what are the challenges of rural Maharashtra as well. And in fact, I published a paper with Professor Sarthak Gaurav at School of Management at IIT Bombay. He works fantastic in agriculture. So I am aware of some of those work, and in the past I've also worked at JPAL and some of those researchers at JPAL at Harvard Business School. So I'm aware, but of course, because you're on the field, so you have the larger understanding of what's happening now. My work is in that field is like 10 years back. Yeah. Anyways, let's go ahead. We still have 5 more minutes. There are 2 more questions which are which I find in chat, which are also connected to what I wanted to ask. So let me quickly take them, and then maybe I'll move ahead. So Shantanu is asking, so this is very interesting because policy is always, some understanding of policy is always important. So he's asking that, what is the most important and underrated, of course, maybe non-tech factor, maybe culture, policy, or something else, where you feel that digital solution, although it's your work is not only about digital solution, but whatever you are doing, what other non-tech factor is the most important factor that solution succeeds or fails on the ground? Or maybe if you can.
Oh, no. I mean, let me be very clear. The digital solution is only an enabler.
Yeah.
Digital solution on its own cannot solve anything. It is an enabler. Technology is only an enabler. What is most important is people and relationships and culture and, of course, policy. Right? I mean, when you're looking at large scale, then you have to look at government and policy. There is no question about that. But even for NGOs, right, to have partnerships which are based on mutual trust, on openness, on sharing, on working together to solve the problem, on building that culture throughout the organization and getting people to actually adopt and change, those are the most important factors, right? So, I mean, I would in fact, even in our work, I would say I think we would spend at least 30 to 40% of the time of my team is actually spent on change management issues, not on the technical solution.
Great. Thanks. Rishi.
So it goes, the next question is about your own skills. In corporate setting, you gain certain leadership skills, right? That are applicable in those corporate settings. Now, which of these skills are transferable in the social sectors? And what are the skills that you had to unlearn so your social sector can be more impactful or whatever you want to do with it?
I think the skills that are help, right, in the social sector, one is the entire, structured thinking and problem solving, right? I think that is the most, one of the most important skills that I find very useful here. And looking at the problem, breaking it down to its parts and figuring it out really, where do we need to solve and how do we need to solve in a very structured manner. So that structured thinking and problem solving is, I would say, number one foundational skill. Structured communication also, in a sense, because you need to be able to explain to people in a way that they can understand. So how you are able to tell them is important. But I think the other very important skills are, of course, project management is important because you're handling so many projects and they have to be managed. But I think the most important, if you ask me in order of priority, structure thinking and problem solving. And after that, it is the whole, in consulting, we learned a skill called client relationship management, we used to call, right? And I think that's the whole thing of managing the people and managing NGOs and vendors and the relationships and the equations and working together to that whole thing, what I said, right? The tech is just the enabler. But if you cannot handle the people aspect of it, right, then you can never be successful. So I think that is a very big skill of really managing people expectations, and how you do it is very important. But again, it's this, so this is the part which is, I don't know whether I'd call it unlearning, but it's, you have to change your mindset from the corporate sector, because I think what you have to develop here is a lot more empathy, because people are working in very, kind of difficult environments and trying circumstances with limited resources and trying to solve very difficult problems. And sometimes we can't even imagine how marginalized these people are or how low their agency is, right? So I think that part of it requires some mindset change where you have to actually really get down to it. You have to go there, you have to meet people, you have to understand where they're coming from, and also work from that lens of deep empathy, along with having all the other technical parameters and ticking them. So I think that's extremely important.
Great, thanks. So, and that brings to the final question, given the time. And of course, this is something which I usually will be asked after the talk, which is for new alumni, or even senior professionals, for example, they want to contribute to social impact, but they are not sure where to start with. What would be the practical advice that you would like to give? So, for example, if they reach out to me, what I would do is I can connect to you. I can't do more than that. But what you can do is, maybe what you can share with them will be helpful for them to get started.
Firstly, a lot of times people are thinking that they want to do something, they're not sure what to do, they don't know how to go about it. I think it's a very real problem. But what I always tell people is that, see, the number of problems that we have, right, to be solved are quite large, and the scale of every problem is large. So just, I think, firstly, find what is it that resonates with you, right? For some people are very passionate about, say, climate and environment. Somebody's passionate about education. Somebody's passionate about agriculture, whatever it may be. Somebody, it's gender. Whatever is the cause that really kind of calls out to you from your heart, or wherever you feel there's a problem that you want to solve, right? Even if you're going from the head and you say, this is a problem that I find very intriguing and I really want to work on it. However, as I said, whether you work through the heart or the head, it's okay. But what is that one thing that you really want to work on? You first pick that one area. Once you pick that, right, then you just try and kind of dive into it and understand it a little more to see what you can do. I think the key thing is really to really get started. I think if we think too much, it's very hard. You have to kind of dive into it and just get started. Meet people, meet an organization, find out what's happening, find out what you can do, and just start doing something. as you have the intent, I genuinely believe, and I think that's what I have experienced, that once I had the intent and once I started putting in the effort, right? I mean, the path paves itself if you keep at it. But if we stand, on the sidelines and just keep thinking, should I do this, that, nothing will happen. You just have to get into it. That is my advice.
Great, thanks. And I think non-profit entrepreneurship is, in that sense, in that learning, is not different from what we have been hearing in TEG talks from other entrepreneurs as well. And non-profit per se, the field is also not different in terms of what journey and what thinking process you have shared. So with that, thanks a lot, Rekha, for taking out time.
Yes,
And hopefully you will hear a lot more from us and other young alumni who would like to work and create a lot. Yeah.
I would just
Thank you,
like
everyone.
to make
Yeah.
a comment.
Yeah, sure,
I
sure,
just
sure.
would like to make a comment that there is a Pan IIT social impact group for people who are like-minded. Please feel free to join that. And if you are in the Bay Area, there is a separate WhatsApp group for social impact that you can also join if you are in the Bay Area.
Yeah, even
Yeah.
TEG has, by the way, TEG has, so don't worry about it. We can always
Okay.
connect you in there. There is another
And
IITians group
Rekha,
in
I would
India
love to
also.
connect with you and talk about IIT startups and IIT Bay Area and how we can improve our impact and scale using your skills
So for that,
and
Rishi,
methods.
you missed that. You were in Mumbai. You missed that already.
I know.
Yeah. But anyways, Rekha, thanks a lot for your time. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rishi and Vaibhav, and big thanks to all the audience who have come. And I hope you've enjoyed this talk. I've enjoyed speaking to both of you, and thank you so much for this.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Deep, for organizing and
Yeah,
suggesting.
I already thanked her in the beginning because I was not
Yes.
sure in last year if there will be time
He's
or
my
not.
old friend. So
Oh, great.
from the days I was doing my IIT Bombay legacy project for a batch, I've known her. So I've known her still for many years, and
Uh-huh.
so much.
Yeah.